What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored. You know who this is. It's the dad bod god, baby, the bald, the beard, and the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight, man, we got a special one for you guys. We got Youssef, Uwee Dib in the building, professional boxer, 19-0 up in this bitch. I'm excited to have Uwee Dib on. I actually got to call his last fight, which was essentially my first time calling boxing. So I'm excited to talk about that fight and much, much more. But before we get into that conversation with Uwee Dib, let's take a quick second to tell you about sleefs.com. That's SLEEFS, sleefs.com. Now, if someone you or someone you know may be an athlete, you need to go and check out sleefs.com. All of this stuff is covered from all your athletic gear and wear. They've got armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, headbands, boots, mouth guards, and they've even got these dirty boxes that you know I'm always rocking. Now, I got to tell you, these dirty boxes are the most comfortable boxes that I own. I actually don't own any other boxes. I got rid of them all. These dirty boxes stay dry, they stay fresh, and they've got funky designs on the front of them to keep that special person in your life giggling when the belt buckle comes undone at the end of the day, if you know what I'm saying. But guys, go and check out sleeps.com. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Now, thank you for joining wherever you're tuning in. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. Hit the bell to stay notified. Tap the little red button and tap in, because you know I'm bringing you the best interviews and conversations from professional wrestling, professional sports, boxing, MMA, entertainment, music, and everything. So guys, get to tapping, and you know you are not going to regret it. Also, if you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. It helps with our analytics. It helps us bring more amazing conversations to more amazing people like yourselves. So as I said before, tap the buttons and tap in and start joining us, because you know we're bringing you some of the best bloody content going around today. But without further ado, let's get into my conversation with the one, the only, Youssef Uwee Dib. Yeah, baby! Uwee Dib, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here, man. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here with you, Piers. And can I just say, man, I listened to you commentate my last fight. You did a great job. But damn, the way that you put through an introduction, man, I think we need you as an MC at the next fight night.
Oh man, thank you so much. That's nice of you to say, bro. That was actually my first time like doing boxing commentary, and like I've trained before and I've been around boxing and MMA in my past, but as far as going out there and calling a fight, that was something like I was so nervous going into it, because it's like I come from the pro wrestling world, where it's a completely different world. So it's like I got told, just do what you do there. And I'm like, yeah, but these people like will legitimately kill me if I say what I say.
Nah.
But like, I felt like it was so fun. It was so exciting. It was something so different. But the fact, like, I got to call your fight as well, which I thought was an amazing fight, mind you. I think you and Kai McKenzie, man, like that guy is one tough son of a bitch. Like he came out there and he was like the biggest bad guy I've ever seen. A crowd, like they just instantly hated this kid. And I felt like people asked me, they said, what was it like? I said, bro, this fight was in the middle of Campsie, and it was Uwee Dib versus a blonde hair, blue-eyed white kid from the country, bro. Like, and I said, it was almost like the biggest, like the loudest thing I've ever experienced, in an inside building like that.
Yeah, well, look, he played the perfect antagonist, I felt, and I just sort of, as much as what he did throughout the night, sort of annoyed me and got under my skin a little bit. Like, I'm actually glad that he did so, because it just set the tone for the night. And as you said, the atmosphere was amazing. So I've never experienced anything like that in terms of the walkout, the amount of people that were there, and just I could feel the energy in the room. You guys kept saying it, like you could feel the energy in the room, but the way that I felt, and that's probably the first time that I felt as relaxed as I did walking into the ring. And I'm so glad that he did everything that he did in the lead up, because like I said, it set the scene for what it was, and it turned out to be an amazing night.
I mean, like, I think like he definitely did try and break you mentally, and like everything that I heard from like the build up at the weigh-ins. And like I think like in sport, and we were talking about this before we sort of started recording, right? Like there's certain things that you can do and not do. And I feel like when it comes to sporting and it comes to like beef and stuff like that with anyone, where whatever it is, whether it's sport or just if you have a problem with someone, like if I have a problem with you, I have a problem with you. I don't have a problem with the billions of other people that happen to be the same background or follow the same beliefs as you. No,
Yeah.
my problem's with Youssef Dib, not those other people, right? So I feel like when you have a problem with that, yeah, you can get personal stuff. Yeah, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. But I feel like crossing that line, there's a fine line. Do you feel like in the fight game that is kind of pushed on a regular basis?
In terms of the fight game, man, some people get really desperate to basically put, the other athlete off, and that comes in most sports. You hear about racism in different sports, whether it be AFL, the NRL. Unfortunately, in boxing, it does sort of pop up, but generally, look, if you can sort of keep it respectful in terms of that, like everything else is pretty much fair game. Like, just don't bring up family, don't bring up religion, anything else you want to say. You're ugly, you fought crap boxes, and whatever else.
You're a bitch, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, your breath stinks, whatever it is. Like it is what it is, man. And but once you sort of start to bring up the religion card, the race card, family, for some people, because you just don't know what that sort of stuff means to people. So for me, religion is a major, major part of my life. For me, family is a major part of my life. Once he sort of crossed that line, I had two options. It was either react now, do something to this guy who's, basically yelling in my face and telling me things like your God can't help you, and go pray, like making a mockery out of what we do and things like that. It was either, okay, attack this guy right now, or play it cool, just realize what he's trying to do, and stay in the moment. And I was pretty present, and I was pretty aware of what he was trying to do. And like, as I went home from the way in driving home, like I thought to myself, man, okay, this guy is really worried. Like, if he's resorting to that sort of stuff, it's showing me that he is banking on me losing my head. So let's be really mindful to not lose our head. And I feel like I did that throughout the whole sort of process, man.
I think you remain calm, you remain cool. Like that's one thing I think I even said on commentary was like you were so calm and cool, collected throughout that fight. Like your punches were that I mean there was no unnecessary like punches thrown. You weren't coming in. You weren't reacting emotionally.
Yeah.
I felt like you were very methodical in that fight and how you handled yourself. Was there ever any part of you throughout the whole process, like especially at the weigh-in when he sort of did start mentioning, there's no your God can't help you, go pray. Was there ever a part of you at that point where you were just like about ready to snap?
There was a point, like when he pushed me, and sort of I was like, is this guy for real? And then I just sort of thought to myself, and my trainer was right there, and he goes, you get paid to do it tomorrow, Uwee. And that stuck to my head right away. And I thought to myself, you know what, he's right. Like, because you can sort of react. You can, if I let's say I'd punched him, and split his eye or something like that and jeopardize the fight, I wouldn't have been happy, because I had put in 12 weeks of work to showcase my abilities in front of a crowd, in front of an audience. So there was definitely no point where I had completely lost it. But yeah, you do sort of think about it for that 1 second, but luckily enough, I kept my head.
But I think that that's the difference between a professional and someone who is not a professional. You know what I mean? Because like you see athletes, I think, and even celebrities for the longest like time, they're gonna run into people, and like whether it's a fellow competitor, or even if it's just like some like schmo off the street. It's like, oh, there's Uwee Dib the boxer. How funny would it be if I could get him to react and like
Yeah,
throw a punch?
definitely.
You know what I mean? Or like certain shit like that, where it's like I take my hat off to people like that, man, because it's like to be able to sit there and cop that shit and like, you know what I mean? And to be able to remain calm, cool, collected, bro. I don't know if I could be calm in that situation. So I take my hat off to people that are able to do that, because it's like that's a big thing to be able to do.
Yeah, look, it's not right that people sort of can take aim at, people with a bit of a profile. And look, I'm far from somebody that's got the greatest profile or anything like that. So I don't really cop that sort of stuff. Obviously you do cop it a bit online and things like that, and on different sort of forums. But in terms of like people that want to do that and attack, celebrities and things like that, it's not right. But it just comes with the territory. Like if you're sort of in a higher position, of course people are going to try to bring you down. Like that's something that I've known for a long time, and been lucky enough to witness my brother Billy's career and see how he's sort of dealt with, criticism, negativity. And I've taken a real leaf out of his book in certain things. And okay, I like how he reacts to these certain situations. And then other situations where I know he doesn't react so well, where I know that it's sort of getting to him a little bit and he sort of gets agitated by it. So for me, I looked at all of it and I was like, okay, I need to find that medium where I can, deal with the criticism, because like I said, it's going to come with the territory, no matter what you're doing. No matter what you're doing, once you're
100%.
reaching a higher position, people are always going to try and bring you down, man.
100%. And I think as well, like you put yourself out there for that as well. Like when you start, like I think when you become a professional athlete, when you put yourself out in public forums, you know what I mean? Like you put yourself out there for people to comment on. And I feel like the best thing that you could probably do is like, listen, like someone gave me this advice. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, listen to people's feedback, but like, are you really going to take someone's feedback about how to drive a Ferrari when they're driving a Hyundai Excel?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great
you
point.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
nah,
kind of like listen to
that's
the
a great
feedback
point.
that's relevant, that people that have like have an understanding of like what you are trying to do or have achieved at what you're trying to achieve in. That's the advice that you really want to go for, right?
Yeah, that's like I said, that's where I'm very, very lucky to have been there throughout my brother Billy's career. And I've seen so many amazing people and so many different mentors and, um, the likes of, oh man, like amazing boxers, whether it be Anthony Mundine, the Costa Zoos, people who have sort of given him advice, and I've sort of been there to witness that. And when he was signed to places like Golden Boy, or to promoters like Golden Boy, and to SMS promotions, I was sort of understanding of what he was going through, and he'd relay to me like, this is what they're telling me. And obviously for me, knowing that, okay, I'm forging a career in the same path, I can take on a bit of that advice. But yeah, it all comes with experience, man. Like the more experience that you get, the more you know how to deal with certain situations. And I could actually admit that if I had fought Kai, a couple of years back, where I wasn't as mature as a person, where I wasn't a father, and I hadn't grown in life, I probably would have bit. I probably would have like really, you know, reacted to the things that he was doing. But that experience to me and the maturity, and I remember coming back after the fight, and my trainer, one of my trainers, Hussey, he said to me, I'm so proud of you, man, because you showed some real maturity there tonight, like maturity that you've never shown before. So like, that all comes with experience. Life life experiences, experience in the ring, whatever it is that you're dealing with, you can sort of take it and then implement it into whatever you're doing.
You mentioned seeing your brother and everything he's gone through. Billy's had a bit of a scary time in the last recent few months,
Yeah.
health wise. It was great to see him at your show and at your fight and showing support for that. You know, when I did interview Billy, one of the things that I really took away from an understanding what he said about your family, it was how close that you all were, and this close connection, whether it's from your parents, siblings, everything like that. You guys are a close family unit, which is amazing to hear. How did that affect like what he went through with the leukemia? How did that affect the family being such a close knit group? Was it how was that for the family? How was that for you going through?
It was definitely a really, really tough and trying time. I didn't realize how much it was affecting me until I actually got the news that he was cancer free. So when we found out that he was in remission, and I remember exactly, I was in a meeting, um, and I got the phone call from him, and I knew that like it was the day that he was going to get the news. So when I got the phone call from him, I actually missed the call originally, and I looked at my phone and I was like, "Oh, guys, I need to get out for a couple of minutes."
Yeah.
I tried to call him. He missed the call. And then he called me back 2 minutes later when I was with them. And I was like, guys, I need to go. They're like, yeah, go, go, go. And then once he gave me the news, the sense of relief and the weight lifted off my shoulders. Like, you hear all of those expressions, but
Mm,
until you're in a situation like that, and I've been through situations like that in the past, with my
sure.
own children and things like that. But for Billy, like he said, we're so tight knit. We're such a close family. And then in terms of Billy and I, we've got the probably the strongest connection because of our shared interest in boxing, and
Mm,
he's really involved in my life. I'm really involved in his life. Once he told me the news, I broke down, man. I was in tears, and like obviously it was joy, but I could sort of just feel everything coming out, and it took me like a day or two. And this was only like a couple of weeks out from the fight, really. It was only,
yeah.
12 days out from the fight that he was getting the news. So it took me a couple of days, and I was pretty mindful of how I was going to let it affect me, but it just came in perfect timing because I was, like I said, a couple of weeks out from the fight. I could go into the fight completely clear headed. We had amazing news that Billy was cancer free and in remission, and that to me, it just felt like another sign from God that, like, hey, everything's going okay, like, because this fight meant a whole heap to me. This fight was it was the biggest step up of my career so far, and it was probably one of the fights where I actually did encounter some doubts early on in the camp, doubts that sort of washed away as the camp went on because I was so confident in the work that I would put in. But like there were those serious doubts. Like, this guy can punch. Kai can really punch. He's got a really decent knockout record and knockout ratio on his record. And I knew that at any point, if I had gotten sloppy or if I had made that one mistake, that he could capitalize on it and basically put my lights out. Like that was I went to the edge of that cliff. I
Yeah.
went there and I made sure that I was aware of it, and that's why I was so sort of switched on throughout the whole fight and didn't let anything affect me. But in terms of Billy and the news, what it did for our family, it was massive, man. Like, we dealt with it. We obviously, he's got a young son, his wife, so we just tried to be there as much as we could to support them and do whatever we could to sort of make his life easy. And that meant that we would go to the hospital and spend days with him at a time. Like, we had a roster between us siblings that and my mum, that we'd spend the day with him as he's sort of going through the chemotherapy treatment. And it was hard to see. It was hard to like see him sort of wither away, and you could see how much it had stripped from him. So
Yeah.
it does. It really affects you, But thank God he got through. He proved how inspirational he is. I said to him that, look, Bill, no matter what happens, Bill, I just understand something. You've inspired more people throughout these few months of your cancer journey than you could have ever done, winning fights, winning world titles,
Yeah.
making, money, making big moves in boxing, whatever it is. Okay, you have inspired people so much more than you realize, and just understand that. And I think he did. He knew how much that journey was doing for people who might have been going through the same thing, might have been going through other things. He knew how much that was helping them. So hence why he documented it so heavily throughout the process. Because I'm a bit more of a private guy. Like
Yeah.
personally, I don't think I could put myself out there that much dealing with something like that.
Yeah.
But Billy's got this real amazing streak about him where he likes to get people involved, and he wants to use his platform. He really does want to use his platform to help other people.
Mm.
And
But I
I
think as
really
well,
get
like
that.
it's like you get that energy from people that, like, obviously people that follow you follow for a reason. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like on
yeah,
social media, and like the haters, they're easy enough to wean out and block. But like I feel like for the most part, like for majority of people that follow people on social media, it's because they care about them to a certain extent, and
yeah. True.
maybe sometimes getting that little bit of extra support from like random strangers, the likes or the comments and stuff like that can really boost people's morale with a lot of things as well.
It would have with Billy, because I know one thing: that guy is always on his phone. He is always on his phone. So like, and he'll reply to everybody. Like he will reply to everybody, and he will, like, obviously he was copping thousands and thousands of messages and
Mm.
comments and things like that. It would have been really hard to keep up with. But then again, he was spending endless hours in the hospital, not really doing much. So that might have been his solace, while he was in the hospital. And he's pretty good like that. He'll respond to people and
Mm.
basically give everybody time of day, and he's a real amazing human being when it comes to things like that.
100%. Now, with you getting into boxing, like and following Billy's footsteps into the world of boxing, like, was the family supportive of that? Going, okay, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, going, all right, well, we've seen, Bilal go through it. Or were they like going, not
They were
you,
like
man?
they were like, hell nah,
Yeah.
because
They would have seen
I'm,
the bullshit and the drama
yeah,
firsthand with Billy, right?
yeah, definitely. And unlike Billy, I started at a bit of a later age. He was boxing since he was 12 years old. I started at 17 years old. I actually tried to start a bit earlier, but things just didn't happen for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get fights for whatever reason when I was like 14 years old. And people were telling me, oh, it's because of who your brother is and whatever else. Billy was sort of well established, and
Mm.
when you're amateur boxing and really starting out and you're a novice, they don't want to put you like you. They want to put two novices in together.
Mm.
And they might have felt like, oh, okay, this guy's brother's Billy. He might know a little bit too much for our kid, and so it just didn't work out for me for whatever reason. But when I was 17 and I was starting again, I had to do a whole lot of convincing, because I was doing quite well at school,
Yeah.
getting pretty good grades, and I went on to university and things like that. But my parents were just like, nah, you don't need boxing. Like, Billy's got boxing, and that's all Billy has. You've got your brains,
Yeah.
you've got a good future ahead of you in terms of your education and things like that. And I was like, guys, one fight, I promise you, one fight. That one fight, and it was amazing. Like, it was an atmosphere like the atmosphere at Campsie, a
Yeah.
couple of weeks back. It was absolutely crazy, because people really did believe that, okay, this is going to be Uwee's one and only fight. And
Yeah.
obviously being Billy's brother, there was a certain level of expectation.
Sure.
Uh, but nah, once I had that one fight, that's it. That itch had been scratched, and there was no way that they were going to stop me from having more fights. And my next fight actually came at a time where my parents were overseas, so they
Perfect.
didn't,
Perfect.
yeah, they didn't know about it. but then when they sort of got back and like, I was doing the HSC, so I had 3 amateur fights, and then they're like, no, you're doing your HSC now, no more boxing, no more, that's it, cut it off. They go, look, we can revisit it later after your HSC. So I went through my HSC, did pretty decent. But again, like once you want something enough, like it doesn't matter who it is, man. Like your mum, your dad. Like I've got the utmost respect for my parents. I've got the utmost respect for my older brothers and things like that. But being the youngest of 7 siblings,
Jeez.
the youngest of 7. So like I've always respected what they want for me. But this was one thing that like if I didn't follow this passion and if I didn't sort of give it as best as I have, then that's something that I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. They're not going to deal with that. They're not going to be dealing with the fact that, hey, I would have been asking myself the question that 30 years old or whatever. Oh, what if? I didn't want to go through that, and I've stuck to that, man.
Well, you never want to be the middle-aged guy going, oh, like I could have been this. You know what I mean?
True.
Whereas, like, just hey, man, if you got time on your side, go and do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, look, that's something that I've wrestled with throughout my whole professional career, to be honest with you, and I have had sort of a topsy-turvy professional career in terms of, I'm 19-0, but at the same time, like I haven't sort of reached the heights that I feel like I could be at, or I guess in terms of where I believe I could have been by now, and COVID had a big hand in that, but I feel like I'm not where I really want to be, and fighting Kai was a great step in the right direction, but there's so much more to do. But that's something I've wrestled with throughout my whole career, where my brothers are like, look, this boxing thing, we've seen how dirty the game is. We've seen, like it's hard to make money in the sport. Like you've got a young family, I've got 2 children. So they're like, look, do you really want to sort of put yourself through all of this? And if it wasn't for my sort of passion in boxing, I would have quit a long time ago, man, because we don't make the sort of money that people might believe that we do make, and it's a hard career to forge, man. It's a very, very hard career to forge. So
100%. To be a millionaire in the world of combat sports, it's like there's so many factors that have to be in line. And you know what I mean? Like, yes, it does happen for a lot of people, but like there's also a lot of people that it doesn't happen as well, man.
Probably 1 or 2% of people, really. Like if you really think about it, of how many active combat fighters there are in the world, like it really doesn't happen for a lot of people. And but sometimes you just have to work out, like, what do you value the most? Is it money, or is it to follow your passion? Is it, for me, I want to be able to say when I'm 40 years old now, like, so I used to think, okay, when I'm 30 years old, I don't want to regret it. Now I'm thinking, okay, when I'm 40 years old, I don't want to turn around and say, look, I was 15-0, 16-0 at the time. And it was as recent as that, when I was 15-0, 14-0, where I was sort of, okay, like really deliberating, like, am I going to continue on with this as a career? Am I really going to continue to put my family through sort of the hardship that I have to go through with boxing? But again, I go back to, okay, when you're 40 years old, you're going to regret it. Trust me.
100%.
Like just keep at it and do as best as you can. And at least that way I can sleep at night, no matter what level I sort of reach and how lucky I get in the sport of boxing. Cause that, like, we have to, like, be real. Like, you do need a lot of luck. You need a lot of connections. You need a lot of things to fall in your favor to make it in this sport. But I need to do my absolute best for me to be able to sleep at night, man. Like that's one thing that I know. So, that's one thing I'm going to teach my kids throughout their life. They're still young now, but I'm going to tell them, it doesn't matter what you want to do, like, do it to your absolute best. Like, just do it as well as you can. And if you succeed, you succeed. If you fail, you move on. Like, it is what it is. You can't just stop, as soon as things get a little bit difficult. Like that's not who I want to raise as children.
And that's the hardest thing is like, when you teach your kids that those sort of values, and it's like, my eldest son now who's 7 is going through that. It's like, he's plays football, but like for the majority of the game, he'll sit there and be like looking at these nails, and someone will hand him a ball, and then he'll run the length of the field and score a try. And it's like, yes, you did well, mate, but like the thing is, it's like you did well in that moment. But
Yeah,
it's like you could have done so much more and be more valuable to you know what I mean? Like I think team
yeah,
sports a different thing, but it's like, but I
a bit
said
of
to my son,
consistency.
I just said to my son, I go, I will never be upset. I go, if you perform badly, but I'll be upset if you go out there and you don't try. Because I
Yeah,
feel
don't
like
give it.
if you're going to do anything, like whether it's like a team sport or boxing, a single sport, anything like that, if you're going to go and people are going to invest time in you and effort in you, then you need to invest that time back into yourself. And if you know what
Definitely.
I mean, like that's always been my mentality with sport. It's like if you agree to do something, you see it through to the very end. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely. Look, you got to give it, and you got to give it your all, no matter what you're doing. Like there's in boxing, you've got a team who have put in so much work. Like, so it's up to you. Like they've put in the work in the background, the work that nobody else sees, all of the training, all of the
Mm,
programming, all of the in terms of getting the promotion ready, everything else. Like so, then it's on to you to do the right thing, which is give it your absolute best. If you lose, you lose. It is what it is. Like one person is going to win, one person is going to lose. But if you go out there and you don't give it your best, and for whatever reason you're not like sort of there mentally, and you haven't done the right things in the lead up, then that's really something that you've let people down. And that's
mm,
one thing in my life, man. I've really put that, like that's been a major priority of mine. I've coming from a pretty successful family, and my dad's raised some really good children, and being the youngest, so like I said, youngest of 7, and looking at all of my older siblings who have made something of themselves. For me, I just didn't want to be a letdown. I didn't want to be the one to sort of make my dad say, oh, this kid, look at him, he's not doing his best, and stuff like
yeah.
that. Like I put that expectation on myself from a very, very young age. And
Mm.
I had to grow up a little bit faster than most kids. um, you know Between me and my eldest brother is 20 years.
Oh
So
wow, shit.
yeah, so he basically played a major part in raising me. And you
Mm.
know he's successful. The next 3, the next 4, the next 5, all of them, they're all successful, and have done really, really well for themselves. So I put that pressure on myself from a young age, and was like, "Yeah, okay, don't fail in life, do
But
whatever
like,
you're doing." But
was that ever like too much for you, like to really handle? Because like because your older brother being 20 years your senior, right? So like from a young age, like you've seen this, like him as a man, like you have
yeah,
not really had a childhood
yeah,
where like he was a child growing up with you. So like him being like 20 and you getting to say like 10 years old, right? Where he's like 30, where you're at 30 in life, and then like looking at that's a pretty hard expectation to put on a young person though.
yeah, it is. They never really made me feel that way. It was more myself that did that. Like it
Sure,
wasn't them.
yeah.
Like they
No,
they
no.
they re- they really helped me as much as life. And some people would say that I was a bit spoiled and whatever growing up, because I
You're the
remember, like,
baby. You're
yeah,
the
in times
baby.
in times of celebration and stuff. Like I remember going to school, where we'd have our Eid, which is like a pretty much like our Christmas.
Yep.
I'd go to school, and we talk about how much money we got, or like, because that's what a big thing on Eid is, you give money. And some
Yep.
people will be like, oh yeah, we got 120 or $150. And I've got so many older siblings who are all like, between me and Billy, who's the next youngest brother, there's 7 years. So they've
Oh, wow.
always played, yeah, they've always played the role of like older brother, and I was like the really young one, so they'd really look after me.
Yeah,
Somebody will be like,
yeah.
oh, I made $120, and I'm like, yeah, I got $600. And they're like,
Wow.
what? And it was pretty cool growing up like that. But at the same token, I never like sort of was the type that would be like, oh, please give me, like, oh, I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
go
yeah,
to
yeah.
any of my brothers and be like, oh, can you help me with you know, I would really be shy to ask for anything. But out of the goodness in their heart, they would do it anyway, and just to look
Mm,
after me, and they just wanted to make sure that I was raised, you know, in the right way, and that again that I wasn't going to disappoint dad, who had put in so much hard yards with all of his children. By the time
mm.
by the time I was like getting older, like my dad was already, you know, quite old. So my dad is 73 years old. So between us is 43 years between dad and I. So yeah, it's you know, for me, like I never really had that getting raised by my dad. It was more raised
Mm.
by my brothers, and they just wanted to make sure that, hey, don't end up on the streets, you know, especially when we moved from Engadine when I was 8 years old. We moved from Engadine to Greenacre, and that was like a big culture shock. It was
That's
a big,
massive difference, bro.
yeah,
I live in Engadine.
big, oh wow, yeah, big
Hey,
big change. So you know, they grew up in Engadine. I grew up in Engadine until I was 8 years old, and I remember moving schools from Engadine Public School over to I went to a private school, private Islamic school when I did move over to Greenacre, and that was like a big culture shock for me. And you know, like it's no it's no secret that, you know, the kids that are in the Greenacre Bankstown area, you know, they try to follow the street life a little bit more. But my
yeah,
brothers just always wanted to make sure that I didn't do that, so they looked after me as best as they could, and just, you know, set the right sort of standards for me. And I kept that expectation high for myself, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to disappoint anybody. In terms of, was it too much at times? Yeah, like, but I learned how to deal with it more and more as I grew up, and I sort of realized that it's not them putting the expectation on you, you know, like, and you can sort of fall into that trap where you're like, oh, but there's so much expectation, and it's a lot of pressure and things like
mm,
that. But when you realize that it's not anybody else putting the pressure on you, it's yourself. It's like, okay,
100%.
so
But you
deal with it.
you were probably very lucky having, like, all your siblings around you at that age as well, because it's like when you're put in that situation, I feel like people will always, like, people succumb to peer pressure, right? So and like as you said, you know, that area around that time, and it was for around the longest time as well, a lot of the kids that are growing up in that area revert to that street life. And like I feel like maybe you were lucky in the sense that you had the, you know, your older siblings there to keep you on track in that aspect, because like
Definitely.
a lot of people can very easily come from really good homes that fall down this path because it's like they're just victims of their environment. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah,
just, like,
definitely.
they become into that environment. It's like when a baby's born, like everyone goes, how much like the baby looks like the mum or the dad, right? But when someone passes away, they're not sitting there going, "Oh wow, look at him. He really looks like his mum and his dad." It's like, "Wow, this person looks like the choices that they made in their life,
Yeah,
which
it's
led
true.
them to this moment." You know what I'm saying? Whereas, like, I feel like there's a lot of times in those sort of situations where people, even at young ages, they have these choices, and a lot of times people go, "You know what? I'm going to go down this path," or, "You know what? There's something about this that doesn't feel right. I'm going to hold back from that." You know what I'm saying? Like there's a difference from it. And I think that some people can have that smartness about it to go, "You know what? This is not what I need. I don't need to be a tough chest beating person. There's enough
Macho,
people
yeah.
in there. It's okay to be a nice person." And that's where it's like that. I think that that is a value which is sometimes missed in a lot of young people today.
Yeah, definitely. Look, for me, my brothers seeing the discipline that they had to succeed, and that's what it takes to succeed in life. It does. It takes a
Mm,
lot of discipline. It doesn't just happen. It's not just something that you flick a switch and okay, you're successful. It takes a whole lot of discipline. It takes a whole lot of persistence. It takes a whole lot of consistency. So for me, seeing what they did, it was like it was a blueprint for me. And then in terms of being good people, my father really, that was all he wanted. Like, you know, if we were as successful as whatever, but we turned out to be really shit people, I don't think that would make my dad proud. I think
no.
my dad would rather us, you know, not have the most things in life, but you know, we're good to other people. So for my dad, like he, and growing up in Engadine, like, you know, at the time that we did, we were the only, you know, pretty much the one of two Arab families to grow up in all of Engadine. So you can sort of imagine, the things that, and I was a bit young to go through it, but
Yeah.
I do know a lot of my brothers did deal with a lot of racism. My mum at times, who she wears the headscarf, the hijab, she sort of dealt with, remarks and racist remarks and things like that within that area. But my dad's thing was always like kill people with kindness, and he was we owned a corner store
Mm.
on the corner of a home, and we lived in the back of the home as well. So my dad, just whenever people would come through, like my dad would put a smile on everybody's face who came through, and he's like, look, see, you can win people over by being good to them, by showing them kindness, by whether it's giving somebody a discount on something, or whether it's helping somebody with their shopping bag or whatever. Just prove to these people that we're not so different, that like as you think or as you hear or as you read in the media.
Mm.
Just prove to them that you are good people, and watch, you are going to win people over. And my brothers, they did, like they got into their a couple of scraps here and there because of the
Of
racism and
course.
things like
Yeah.
that. And Billy himself got into a lot of trouble, in school, like always having a a fight or whatever because somebody somebody would remark, he was a bit different looking or whatever.
Mm.
But eventually we really won people over within that community. And when it came time to leave, a lot of people were sad and a lot of people didn't want us to go, which was an amazing thing, like compared to when we first got there. And people had spray painted on the fence, "Go home, you dirty wogs,"
Oh,
like.
man.
So that
It's
sort of.
amazing how people have changed over time, and it's funny. Like I remember, like Billy, when I had him on the podcast, he actually told me like a story very similar to that, and he said is like he was telling me that he would come home as like, oh yeah, they pushed me over, they called me this, and he's like, yeah, and the same thing that you just said, he's like that your dad just said, hey man, we just got to kill him with kindness, and we got to
That's
break
true,
down that
man.
barrier, like
Yeah,
we react like that. That's how they expect us to react. Shock them a little bit, show them a kinder side to us. And you
yeah.
know what? That always works because it's like you're not really going to hear someone go, man, fuck that guy was an asshole. He just like kept smiling at me and told me to have a nice fucking day. What a prick.
Yeah,
Right? You know what
definitely.
I mean? Like no one's ever going to say that. So,
Definitely.
but do you feel like, we talked about pressures that you had like growing up. Once you broke into the fight game, did you feel there was a lot of pressures because who your brother was, because of what he achieved in the sport of boxing? Did you feel like it was going to be like, you even said like it was hard for you to get fights as an amateur. Was there always like a fine eye on you through the whole step of your like getting into becoming a pro, even an amateur at that stage?
Yeah, look, there was, but you know what, man? Like, to be honest with you, I dealt with it as well as I could have really dealt with it. Like, I was, had, I didn't really have the biggest amateur background, and I only had 41 fights as an amateur, but I fought at a decent level as an amateur and fought some pretty good names. And um, there was that sort of expectation, but I think I was able to separate myself from you know being Billy's brother, just in
Mm,
the sense of like who I am as a person. Like we're similar, but we're two pretty different people. Like
yeah,
uh, yeah, we've got pretty different mentalities when it comes to a lot of things, and I think people could see that. Like, okay, Billy is Billy, Uwee is Uwee, and then like the whole thing was Billy had an amateur career of 113 fights.
yeah,
I had a third of that. I had 40 fights. So
yeah.
people couldn't really expect me, for when I was going into the pros. They couldn't really expect me to be like an automatic world beater and things like that. So
Sure.
um, we've done a pretty good job of sort of keeping me under the radar while I've learnt the game and really, done my apprenticeship. Let's call it.
Sure.
But I feel like now really is the time to break out of all of that and really start putting their foot on the pedal. Like just put the put the gas on, man, because I'm ready now. Like I'm 30 years old, and I've worked extremely hard to sort of get myself to the point where I know that I can compete with the best fighters, not just in Australia, but I believe that I'm going to be able to compete with the top 15 very, very soon. So that's something I'm going to be pushing for. And if it sort of comes where people are like, oh, Billy Dibb's younger brother is starting to break
Mm.
out and make a name for himself, and I'll welcome that pressure, man. Like, it is
Yeah.
what it is. If it's more attention for me, and if it's more sort of eyes on me, then that's what I want, man. And who doesn't want that as a professional athlete? You want people. That's why we do it. Like, we're showmen at the end of the day. Like, as
100%.
much as like, that's the truth. Every single athlete has that in them. Like, if you're an athlete and you've got aspirations to reach the highest level, you've got aspirations for people to watch you do what you do. It's not
Yeah.
just to do it in a empty room where
I see. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah, that's right. Like, you really, really, really want people watching you. You want those
Mm.
eyes on you. So for me now, man, like, if people are gonna associate me with being Billy's younger brother and things like that, like I said, I welcome it, and I look forward to what the future holds for me. I know that we're about to make some really big moves in the sport of boxing, man, and like I said, I'm ready to sort of start competing at the highest levels. So
What do
that's
you
an exciting
what do you
thing.
what do you think you need to do to break into that upper echelon and to be one of the top fighters coming out of this country? Like,
Well,
what do you think you
I need
need to get there?
I needed like a marquee win. I needed a good name on my record, which Kai
Mm.
McKenzie was definitely a great name on the record. Now I think it's TV coverage more than anything. Like,
Yeah.
I really need that TV coverage. I need to be seen in order for people to know who I am, to be able to showcase my ability. So getting on one of these big cards, whether it be No Limit or Matchroom or whoever it is, somebody that's promoting shows, and obviously at the moment No Limit, who are doing amazing things. They've got a
Yeah.
stranglehold on pretty much all television rights of boxing in Australia. So um, I think that's what it's going to take. But look, you can sort of do it flying under the radar. But for me, like, there's no point anymore of doing that, man. Like, I
Mm.
know I'm ready. I know I'm ready. I proved to myself first and foremost that I was ready, because, like I said, man, Kai McKenzie is no slouch. He's only lost to two fighters in his professional career. One being in an IBO world title fight, and the other one where he had avenged it. I actually had three losses. Yeah, he had three losses because he
Mm.
he he avenged the second guy that he lost to. He avenged that in his next fight. And then he was coming off a loss in his most recent fight. But we know the background of those sort of things, and why he sort
Mm.
of didn't get the wins in those fights, and what was sort of going on in his life. But we gave him ample time to prepare for this fight. And it was a fight that I know that he was expecting to win. Like,
Because
I know that
he came off a 2 year gap, right?
yeah, a year and
2 year gap.
11 months or somewhere around there. Yeah, he had a gap. Which, look, to be honest with you, that's something that, like, a lot of fighters have had to deal with. Like, I had to deal with a year and 6 month gap between one of my more recent fights as well, because of the whole COVID situation, and there
100%. Yeah.
just hasn't been the opportunity to get on on cards and things like that. And he's fought at a really high level, and a lot higher
Mm.
level than I had ever fought to that point.
Yeah.
Like I said, he had challenged for the IBO world title, which he was winning, and he got stopped on his feet. He never got dropped. He got stopped on his feet
Wow.
against Jack Assis, just out of pure exhaustion, which was an experience thing for him.
Mm.
And he had fought on some of the biggest cards in Australia. So, look, for me, it took a win like that to sort of show that I'm ready for that sort of next level.
100%.
Now it's just onwards and upwards, man. Just making sure that we're fighting, good caliber of opponents,
Mm.
and just keep improving our ranking, and hopefully we can challenge for a regional title somewhere down the track, like, help get into that top 15 of the world, which is how it works, man. So
How do you like, as far as pick and choosing fights now? Like, if you had someone come and said, "Hey, we got this young kid, 11-0. Would you take a fight like that, or is that like, I mean, guy who's not ranked? You know what I mean? Like, would you take a risk like that?
for me, man, like, I leave that stuff out of my hands.
Sure.
That's not in my hands. Like that's in the hands of my team, of my management. But as a fighter, I'll take on anybody. Like that's the
Yeah.
truth. Like if you told me right now, like, okay, Youssef, you're gonna fight Josh Taylor, who was the unified, 140-pound champion. I actually fought him as an amateur too, at a point in my amateur career where I was at somewhere like 27 amateur fights, whereas he had 150 plus. I didn't belong in the ring with him,
That's
mate.
a, yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
difference,
like
right?
I didn't belong in the ring with him, but the opportunity came to fight him in a Scotland versus Australia invitational match, when Scotland were touring Australia. And man, like I took that fight on. I lost by split decision to the guy. So like it was a really, really close fight where I remember like winning the first round very clearly.
Mm.
Second round, he definitely got it over me, and then the third round was like a seesawing battle. And I remember going back to his corner, and his corner saying to me, "Man, that is the hardest fight that Josh has had in a long time." They're like, and then when they found out that I had less than 30 amateur fights, they were pretty shocked, because like somebody that had less than 30 amateur fights didn't belong in the ring with Josh Taylor at the time. But I've sort of proven that whenever it's come time to step up, I make good use of it. And I've had experience that, while not a lot of ring time experience in terms
Sure.
of fighting, I've been around the fight game for the longest time, because of my
Yeah,
brother Billy,
of
because
course. Yeah.
of growing up, and I've got a really good fight IQ because of that. So um in terms of the experience, man, there was heaps of fights that I wasn't the most experienced guy, but I'd either come razor close to winning that fight, or I'd even get the win. I've got a win over Connor Ben in the amateurs. Who Connor Ben now, as a pro, he's something like 19-0 or whatever he is, and on the doorstep of a world title fight. Up until testing positive for some sort of banned substance. Um, like there's decent names. George Kambosos Jr., who I lost to 12-10 in my 7th amateur fight,
Oh,
whereas
really?
he was at his 75th amateur fight. And again, people were like, okay, you don't belong in the ring with this guy. And
But do fighters take a risk, and though, like if you're a 75-0 fighter getting in the ring and fighting a 7-0 like is that a risk for that person? Is that a risk for that fighter? Like,
he had no choice, because it was at the state titles, which was like a selection event for the Olympics,
sure.
for the 2012 Olympics. So he had no choice. Really, my trainer didn't want to put me in. Billy
Yeah.
Hussein didn't want me to enter that tournament, but he was like, "Look, these guys are too experienced. You've got the likes of George Kambosos and Val
Mm,
Borg, and guys who have had 60, 70 amateur fights. You haven't even had 10 yet." I was like, "Bro, I don't care. Like, I just want to fight. What's the big deal? We take a loss, we take a loss. At least it's an experience." So I jumped in the ring, did a lot better than what anybody else was expecting.
mm,
I think it was 10 all with 30 seconds to go in the last round. And it was literally his gas tank that got him over the line, because
wow.
I'd outsmarted him, I'd outmaneuvered him throughout the fight. And like I said, man, like to be level with 30 seconds to go, like people were like pretty shocked by it. But I
Mm,
did that throughout my amateur career, like at times, Australian titles, and at the Australian titles, and fighting Josh Taylor and fighting Conor Ben, beating guys that I shouldn't have beaten. But like I just kept proving. So now as a pro, I've got that faith in my ability as well. So like I said, if it came down to me fighting Josh Taylor tomorrow, I'd step in the ring tomorrow with him, because I'm
sure.
confident that once it comes time to step up, I'm going to rise to that level of occasion, and I'm going to put the work in the camp that is required to put in a great performance.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter, man. If they told me 11-0 guy, you got to fight him, he's not ranked.
Mm,
It is what it is. I got to fight. I want to be active. I just want to like keep sort of the momentum going that I do have, because the momentum throughout my professional career has been something that I haven't really had a lot of. So now is the time to really press the go button.
do you feel like there are fighters out there that pick and choose their fights?
Definitely, man.
That
Like
they try and
at
strategically
at
do it,
at
like fight
at
tin
at
cans or
at the most elite level, it happens.
mm,
At the start of professional careers, that happens. But it's just a part of boxing. Like they match you with people who are like, because in boxing, like if you've got short-sighted vision, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah.
But if you've got sort of long-term goals, and the best matchmakers in the world are in a company like Top Rank,
Mm.
who promotes their fighters. And you look at, like, even yesterday, they had a couple of their guys on who they were fighting guys that don't really belong in the ring with them, decent records and whatever, but
Yeah.
like they're picked for a certain reason, and they won't rush their guys. They'll put them in the fights that need to be made at that time, and they'll build their careers. And look, they've proven that it's a successful formula. It's just a formula that works in professional boxing.
Yeah.
Bit different to MMA, where it's okay to have 7, 8, 10. Masvidal's got he's got almost half as many losses as he does wins.
Yeah.
But in MMA, it doesn't matter as much. But I think in professional boxing, it definitely plays a big part. You don't want to be a journeyman. You don't want to be somebody,
Mm.
like, there are people who make good livings out of being those sorts of fighters. But if you've got real aspirations of winning a world title, you got to trust the process, man. You really, you do. You have to trust the process. And
Mm.
part of my process now is now I'm at the point where, okay, we've stepped it up. I beat a good name. What's next? I want a higher level now. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to keep fighting higher and higher levels, get to the point where I can fight on TV, where I can get some major coverage and things like that, and just do the best that I can, man. That's my goal with my boxing career right now.
You mentioned like MMA, UFC, and stuff like that, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine about a week ago, and he's probably just started to get into MMA now, and he's like, "Oh, boxing's a dying sport. The MMA is the thing." And I said, "Bro, do you realize they've been saying this for 15 years?" I go,
Yeah,
boxing is never going to go anywhere, bro. I said the difference is the highest paid boxers compared to the highest paid MMA fighters. It's not a difference of 100 grand, bro. It's a difference of 100 to 200 million. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I go, boxing is such a high profit sport and a high demand sport that I don't think it's going to go. Like, boxing is not going to disappear off the face of the earth.
Nah, look, boxing is something that, like, man, you walk on the street, you see two people fighting, more likely than not, you're going to sit there and watch them. Like, that's just human nature. It's a thing that people are never going to really, it's never going to be a sport that completely dies off. Look, it can give
No.
itself as many black eyes as it has, whether it be robberies and corrupt decisions. And now I think boxing is going to be, after the 2024 Olympics, there's no longer going to be boxing at the Olympics, so things like that. But it just generates too much money. There's too
Mm,
much interest in it for it to ever die. And yeah, MMA is catching up, but at the same token, like, there are people who prefer boxing, and there are people who sort of prefer MMA, and it is what it is. It's like, there are also the people that watch boxing that also watch MMA. Like
mm,
yesterday, I was flicking through, watching Shakur Stevenson fight, which is boxing, and watching Israel Adesanya yesterday. Like,
100%.
I've got vested interest in both of the sports. It is
Mm.
what it is. Like, boxing will never die, man. It'll
I,
never die.
yeah, I
You're gonna have that debate, but I don't think either sport's gonna die. Really, if any sport's gonna die, it could be MMA, because right now we haven't really seen the long-term effects of MMA in terms of
the damage you mean, like,
the damage that they deal with. And obviously,
mm,
boxing's been around for hundreds of years. MMA has been around for like a lot shorter time. I just don't.
15, 20, yeah.
For me, if I could change one thing about MMA, it would, like. But then again, like, it's a part of the sport. But if I could change one thing about it, is that when somebody's knocked out on the floor, like Pereira was yesterday, like that hammer fist from Adesanya after, like, was it necessary? Like, for his,
Well,
you
I
know,
think that comes down to the referee's judgment as well.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
that's fair.
Like I've spoken to a lot of MMA like fighters, and I had just recently I had on Manny Gambirian, who talked about the judging and he said the 10-point must system works, if for boxing, but you put it in an MMA thing, it's like it's a different sport altogether. How can you use the same judging thing where it's like takedowns, control, and things like that? Where I think like for over 15 years, people have been saying this is going to be the new boxing, everything like
Combat,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, like I think that there's room for all of it. If anything, like I feel like it comes down to what people could stomach, because I feel like there's going to be traditional boxing fans that don't really want to see someone getting their arm snapped in a Kimura, or like
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
like the knockouts in MMA just seem a little bit more intense. And I think that there's people out there that probably they can't stomach that. And it's like you now see the power slap and bare knuckle boxing and stuff like that. There's people that just can stomach that level of violence and stomach what that is. And there's people that just can't. You know what I mean? Like I think there's levels to what people are prepared to tolerate when it comes to combat.
Yeah. So my wife today, like when I showed her the Adesanya knockout, she said to me, like, that's probably the most brutal sport in history, right? And I was like, I don't think so, man, because like, at the same token, like these guys, okay, they get knocked out, like, and it looks spectacular, but they're wearing 4-ounce gloves, man. Like 4-ounce gloves, like really, like if you hit somebody in the right spot with 8-ounce gloves, they're going to sleep. So what
100%.
like half the weight in glove, like what's that going to do to somebody? Like,
I think you'd be better off with no glove at all. Like I think that
like,
like the padding on that would probably do more damage than like getting
yeah.
no.
I don't know about that whole bare knuckle thing, man. Like like they walk out of there looking like zippers and stuff, like out of the bare knuckle boxing. Like that's really crazy in my eyes, like. But again, look at the sort of people that are fighting in the bare knuckle boxing. Like it's like, okay, sort of not gonna say really over the hill MMA fighters, over the hill boxers, guys that, it's sort of, okay, looking for a short grab, like short money grab,
Cash
because
grab, yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's kind of what MMA was with UFC when it first started, though, bro. Like they had boxers coming in there fighting like karate guys and stuff like that. Like I feel like it's one of those things where it's going to develop, whether it can develop into an actual sport. Because how do you train for a bare knuckle fight? That would be my thing. Like you're gonna
yeah.
risk fucking your hands up before a fight. Like I don't know. Like
Oh no, they'd have to use like proper gloves and everything. Like I don't know, like there's no such thing as conditioning a chin. Like to me, like there is no such thing as conditioning your face or conditioning your chin to punches. Like I, like you see the whole, before people do that and all of that kind of stuff, just to sort of wake things up and whatever else. But like, man, once your chin is gone, like once your chin is cracked, and I feel like who sort of proved that yesterday. There was a boxer who I watched, and yeah, but like once your chin is sort of gone, your resistance in your chin is gone. Like it's gone. Like there's nothing that you can really do to get it back. We've seen that like numerous times with different fighters and whatever. But like in terms of how do you get ready for a bare knuckle boxing match, like I can't imagine them doing stuff like where they're just punching literally bare
concrete.
knuckle, or whatever it is. Like that would be pretty stupid to me. But yeah, I'm not sure, man.
What do you think of the power slap stuff now?
So I wouldn't even watch it, to be honest. Like I look at that and I'm just like, that's just plain stupidity, man. Like it really is. It's like, okay, now like they're really invoking people's, sort of like the worst part of humanity, man. Like who the hell wants to see somebody just cop a shot, like where you've just got to stand there and like just cop it? Let's see who's got the tougher sort of chin, who can slap harder. Like, come on, man. That to me, like all due respect to it, it's not a sport, bro.
You know what?
It's
I actually had a couple of the guys on, and I spoke to one of them, and one of them said to me was, "Well, brother," he goes, in boxing, a fighter has over 400 punches thrown at him throughout a fight, and I'm going, okay, 100%. I said, but here's my argument. He's
we can
not
protect
standing there.
ourselves.
He's not standing there going
Yeah.
throughout the whole time, bro. Because I'm telling you now, if a fighter has to throw 400 punches and someone's standing there like that, and that person's not knocked out in the first 5,
Yeah. I'll be completely real with you, man. I haven't watched this. Like I've seen obviously the clips of it, but
it's hard to
like
watch.
in terms of like turning it on and watching a power slap match, I've never been able to sit through it and it's not even like I can't stomach it because like I've seen like crazy like yesterday when
Sure.
Adesanya knocked out Alex Pereira yesterday, I was like jumping up and down. I was like, yeah, because I was so happy for him just in terms of the redemption story. But um, like I don't mind that level of violence and seeing somebody knocked out on the floor and whatever
Of
because
course, yeah.
he had every opportunity to protect himself and he got caught in the midst of attacking and he made a silly mistake. He made a silly error where he was loading up on his left hook and Adesanya took advantage and
Yeah.
landed 2 amazing right hands. um like I can stomach it. It's not that I can't stomach
No, no,
watching
no,
people
no.
get knocked out in terms of power slap, but I'm just like, there is no real level of skill involved in that. Like, where is the skill in being able to take a shot, with an open palm to the face? There is no skill level in it. Like,
It's a shock. I think it's a shock factor because it's like like the 2 guys I interviewed, both gentlemen, to be honest, like the way that they presented themselves. But like I had a lot, like, because I didn't know anything about it. So the thing is, like, shit, I run a podcast. Let's get these guys on and have a conversation. I'll learn about it. And it was like it was like I walked away from it and it was like, yeah, like these guys are cool. I had great conversations with them. It didn't make me want to go out there and buy a pay-per-view where I'm going to watch
yeah.
like 8 matches of people getting slapped. Like they were cool. Like I said, I'll be cool with them from here on out. But like at the end of the day, is it a sport that I'm going to sit down there and invest in? That I'm going to sit there and go to my kids, hey, one day you could be up there bitch slapping someone? Like,
Hell no.
yeah, but like I think there's difference to it, you know what I mean? But in the same sense, like I take it from this level, whereas like people said the same shit about MMA when MMA started, right? And look where that is. So it's like I'm one of those people. Hey, I'm gonna be like Switzerland. I'll sit on the fence. You go and slap the shit out of each other.
Nah.
Have
But
fun.
in terms of MMA, like the amount of like I respect MMA because they need to have so many layers to their game and they need to be
100%.
so they need to be able to wrestle, they need to be able to strike, they need to be able to have jiu-jitsu in their game like that. So they've got so many layers to their game, so you got to respect what they do in terms of skill level. Like it's
100%.
but whereas for me the power slap game is completely different. I think if any sport's gonna die out very quickly, it's gonna be that, man, because it's stupid to me. But then again, the world.
Oh, 100%. I think you
Yeah.
just connect headphones were just
Oh,
bubbling there.
sorry.
So we got you back. No,
All
but you
good.
know what? Like I feel like, for the most part, with it that we see like, the MMA side of things and the power slap and these 2 sports that are going down that road. Like, do you feel like, you know, yourself, like, would you ever be tempted to go down the MMA route? Like, is that something that you could see yourself going down there and trying to have an MMA fight?
Uh, Probably not. Like
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like I said, man, you need to have so many different layers. Like if you don't got a background in wrestling or if you don't have a
Mm,
background in like, it's sort of a little bit easier to learn how to strike than it is to learn how to wrestle and to have jujitsu as part of your game and things like that. So I'll respect that sport enough to stay away from it. Like unless
sure.
there'd have to be like something major, like a major intervention in my life in order for me to go down that route. Like, and then like you said, like there is a lot more sort of money in boxing,
Mm,
and opportunities to make money at the elite level of boxing. So like I can't see why I'd ever decide to go down that route. But yeah,
yeah.
I'll keep it sort of at a watching viewpoint at the moment.
You mentioned Adesanya's match yesterday. Did you see what happened after the fight?
Oh, definitely. I saw everything. Like I was up at about 5:30 a.m. and I was sort of flicking through, you know, what he's been tagged in and everything else, like, because man, that really pumped me up. And it wasn't just that; it was sort of the words that he had to say after it as well, you know, in
Mm,
terms, and that really resonated with me. Was that, you know, in order to feel a certain level of happiness, you need to put yourself out there, and you need to like, you really need to do things in order to get that. Like,
no.
you know, if you sort of just, and like for me, like I said, for me, the battle that I've had of, you know, do I continue on with boxing and things like that, like, so it really resonated for me. Like I was like,
Mm,
okay, like, in order for me to reach the happiest point of my life, other than, you know, having children and
sure.
certain things, you know, with family and things like that, like on a career standpoint, I can't see myself being any happier than winning a world title.
Mm,
Like, you know, even if it came to, you know, becoming a businessman down the track or whatever, and growing a business,
sure.
whatever it is, like I feel like the happiest point of my life, other than family things, would be to win a world title in boxing. Like,
Yeah.
because I've witnessed the elation that comes with it. I've witnessed the amount of hard work, the discipline, and so obviously the endorphins of winning a world title would be, you know, something that will be amazing. Like when my brother won one, how I
Mm,
felt then was like crazy. So imagine if it's for yourself, you know, like you love for your brother,
100%.
you love for your brother what you want for yourself, but like if it's you actually achieving something, like it hits the ego in a different way.
100%. Just don't be like Adesanya and start mocking your opponent's son and starts crying in the
Uh,
audience.
look, I can sort of see why he did it. Like in terms of, you know, like his son was quite disrespectful with the whole, you know, he's a kid at the end of the day, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
you
this
know,
was like 6 years difference, bro. Like,
I know, but like the beef that he's had, and like, you know, like if you've lost to somebody 3 times, and
yeah,
you could see how much he had poured into getting that victory. And that's why,
yeah,
like I said, that's why I was so happy for him. Like
100%.
really, to me, it made no difference if Alex Pereira or Adesanya won, but I
Mm,
purely wanted Adesanya to win because of the whole, the redemption sort of thing, and knowing that, like, you know what, man, you've been knocked out twice, you've lost the decision, but yet you still came back, and you like overturned what had happened with a
yeah,
single, like with pretty much with a single shot, man. Like it was crazy. So he was going through every sort of emotion that you could see how happy he was, and he kept it like sort of cool. And you
yeah.
know, after it, you know, him and Alex sort of had their time together, and where
Mm,
where they embraced one another, and you know, he was respectful. He's a showman, man. Adesanya is a showman. He'll do all of that stuff just to stay in the news, stay relevant. Like people are going to be talking about what he did in terms of, you know, mocking the kid, in
yeah.
terms of his whole arrow celebration. Like that was all pretty cool stuff, man. Like
I,
he's a bit
like,
of
you
a
know what? Like when I saw his response to the kid, and he's like, "Hey, what can I say? I'm petty, bro." And I'm just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
because I was just sitting there going, "Motherfucker!"
yeah.
But it's like, you know what? I kind of like, I kind of find it funny, but it's
He's
like in
real
the same
quirky
sense
like
as
that,
like,
eh?
yeah,
He's
like I find that shit funny, but in the same sense as like, man, it's a kid, bro. Like, fuck, it hits
yeah.
different.
I reckon the kid would have got in the ring and done the same thing if he had knocked him out again. Like, you know,
Yeah,
he probably like if he was out cold like how he was the first time that Pereira had knocked him out. Like the kid probably would have done the same thing. And like really, like that's up to Alex as a parent to be like, hey, like, you know, we're combat sports athletes. We have a certain level of respect for one another. You don't do
100%.
that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and
And
where
that
he
could have been a
said,
conversation behind closed doors. You know
it
what I
could,
mean?
it could have, yeah, it could have been, but like, you know, it's cool, bro. There's no like, there's nothing like revenge, man. There is nothing like revenge.
Even against
Far
the
out.
fucking kid, bro. I love
There,
it.
there is nothing like revenge.
Oh man. But I'll tell you what, it is that time. It's that time of the show. It is time for 60 seconds with Piers. How this is going to work, I've got a bunch of random questions. I'm going to fire off at Mr. Youssef Dib. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many as he can.
Here we go.
Uwee, you ready to get the time started?
Let's go.
All right. Oh, first one up. Okay. Snapchat or TikTok?
Snapchat.
What is your dream car?
Porsche. Yeah, Porsche.
What cologne or aftershave is your go-to?
Ooh, good question, man. Probably 1 million at the moment.
Which reality which reality show would you rather appear on? Big Brother or The Amazing Race?
Oh, the Amazing Race.
If you were to release an album, what genre of music would it be?
Probably R&B.
If you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would it be?
Fuck, that's a good question, man. Disciplined, motivated, and loyal.
Would you rather win $10 million or live for as twice as long?
10 million.
Okay. What is something that you enjoy that you're embarrassed to admit? Kind of like a guilty pleasure.
A guilty pleasure. Embarrassed to admit. Sucking my thumb.
And last one, in 5 minutes' time, you are being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
Mobile phone. Food.
There you go. That has been 60 seconds of Piers. And that has been, this has been a great hour. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Good man.
It's been a great podcast. I really appreciate you giving up your time here, Uwee. Thank you so much. But I do end every podcast with one question. And that one question is, what is the one question that I didn't ask during this interview that you wish that I did ask? And how would you have answered it?
The one question. Oh man, we had such a good conversation. That's the one question. Probably like what do you value most, like in life? Like what is it? Even though we did sort of touch on that, but yeah, like what is it that you value most, and maybe like what's one thing that would make me give up, my boxing dream really? Like
And how would you have answered it?
it would definitely center around family, and if it was sort of affecting my family to the point where where I like, because everything that we do now, like as a father, everything that I do now is for my children, so if at the end of the day, if I could, for example, see that I wasn't going to be able to be as good a father as I am because of my boxing career, then I'd definitely give it up, man, because my kids mean everything to me, and my family means everything to me.
Yeah, 100%, man. But where can everyone find you on social media?
You got it up on IG, Uwee did. I'm not as active on Facebook anymore, man. I try to sort of privatize my life as much as I can, and just sort of plug things for boxing through my Instagram. So yeah, I'm at Uwee Dib on Instagram, and I think I'm the same on Twitter, which I'm not really as active on. I sort of just keep up with news and stuff on that, but I'm definitely going to start blowing things up a little bit more as I'm going through my career. But yeah, keep up with me on my Instagram for sure for now.
There you go, guys. Make sure you go over there, follow Uwee on Instagram, show some support, show some love. 19-0 boxer, man. He's going to be the next big thing coming out of Australia in the world of boxing, and he's going to be bring a world title home for the Australian boxing fans, I'm sure. But man, we definitely got to do a part 2, brother. I think this has been a great conversation, man.
Nah, it has been, man. Yeah, it really has been. You're a cool dude, Piers. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, man. But till next time, guys, we'll see you again very soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.